Comics Plus, what is going on? Akasan here. We just finished The Bad Batch, and somebody wanted me to do a Marvel What If Episode 1 breakdown, Easter eggs, details you missed by the new Rockstars. Let's go.
I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of What If Episode 1, which ponders a question: what if Peggy Carter became a super soldier instead of Steve Rogers? But also, what if Steve Rogers became the first Iron Man? What if Nick Fury and Hawkeye had to clean squid chunks out of the Project Pegasus basement? And what if Jeffrey Wright was watching you from space right now? You'd prefer that, wouldn't you? I was honestly pretty surprised how many MCU connections and mythology they were able to work into this show. So I'm gonna break down all the Easter eggs and subtle animation details that you might have missed, and some theories for how this really could tie into the live-action MCU, as the show's creators have indicated Marvel Studios plans to do. This video is sponsored by our friends at Heroes Journal. More on them later.
Heroes
we
Journal.
on the Marvel Studios title, which shifts into animated brushstrokes as a way of signaling to us that we are still in the Marvel Cinematic Universe of the films, with the voices of mostly the same actors or actors trying to emulate them, just one that visually appears in a different medium, similar to how animated Star Wars series are every bit as canon as the films in The Mandalorian are.
True.
The voice of Jeffrey Wright as Uatu the Watcher guides us through the opening titles.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path.
Time, space, and reality are all abstract concepts with Infinity Stone counterparts, and maybe also a clue for the universal constants that this series will treat as variables instead, placing characters in variable times, variable points in space, variable realities. Now, the Watchers are Marvel cosmic entities who observe and record history throughout the multiverse.
But never interfere.
Uatu the Watcher is assigned to our universe, which is why Uatu is the one narrating to us right now. Watchers actually made live-action cameos in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. They were stuck listening to Stan Lee's stories, which was a nod to the fan theory that Stan Lee's various MCU cameos could have made him Uatu. Really, Stan Lee was probably closer to entities like the One Above All, which was an unseen meta figure that was likened to artist Jack Kirby. But Uatu's appearance here is a red outlined silhouette in space, not the flesh-colored heads of the comics.
I like that
he actually
image,
looks
though.
more like the Marvel
Beyonder.
entity known as Eternity, which was the living embodiment of the universe itself. A shattered prism shows moments from the upcoming season, and one of those moments, Captain Carter itself, contains infinite variables within, reflecting how this one altered choice by Peggy Carter also leads to several other variances that we see in this episode, and can imagine beyond this episode's ending. Then we open on the events of the first Cap film, which was itself visually stylized with desaturation to evoke a nostalgic quality. The animation on What If is designed with the same idea in mind, with director Brian Andrews citing the work of artist J.C. Leyendecker from the 1920s and 30s for simple but lifelike 2D characters. And that warmness is heightened in this opening scene with this random bright beam of sunlight on Steve, even though the scene that they base it on was in a windowless, dimly lit lab. But also during that opening prologue, we dissolve from Cap's shield to the planet of Earth, superimposing the shield over the entire world, the way the shield metaphorically became a suit of armor around the world. Haley Atwell returns to voice Peggy Carter. Steve is actually voiced by actor Josh Keaton, who sounds a hell of a lot like Chris Evans does. Stanley Tucci and Dominic Cooper return as Dr. Erskine and Howard Stark, and Tommy Lee Jones' character Colonel Phillips appears, but he doesn't speak. But then the key variant moment occurs.
No, I'd prefer to stay.
There. That's the moment that created a new universe.
Now, that was a throwaway line in the original Captain America film.
Agent Carter, don't you think you would be more comfortable in the booth?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry.
But whereas Peggy watched from the observation deck there, here she stays, which also leads to everyone else who was in that booth staying on the floor too, including the Hydra assassin, whose bomb is now right beside Erskine's foot, causing him to get killed in the blast, not be shot by every Colonel Phillips also gets shot and killed, along with Steve, though he survives, and Peggy shoots and kills the assassin, preventing the need for a street chase, as superpowered Steve Rogers would have gone on. But remember, in that movie, Peggy Carter had that assassin dead in her sights, and she would have killed him had Steve not tackled her. So Peggy steps into the chamber, powering herself up in a sequence matching the storyboard of the film.
Wow, that's cool. That is really cool. Look at that. Wow. Did not know. That one, everybody, But nobody grabbed her chest.
Colonel Flynn, a new character voiced by Bradley Whitford, chews her out afterwards.
Every last drop of that Dr. Erskine serum went into you. And if we get lucky, someday your blood might tell us how to make a real super soldier.
Yeah, look at those vials of blood they're taking out. By my count, I see 19 of them, plus 2 more that they're doing. Just seems like a whole bunch of loose ends that could set up future government experiments with Peggy Carter's blood. Now, in the live-action MCU, the attempts to restart the super soldier experiment included General Ross turning Bruce Banner into the Hulk, along with Emil Blonsky into a super soldier.
Yep, that's exactly what I was thinking.
And according to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, there were similar experiments going on linked with Isaiah Bradley. But in this case, Peggy Carter's blood could be the basis of characters like Thaddeus Ross becoming Red Hulk. Maybe
wow, look at that image. Oops. So, by the way, there was one little side thing I was kind of thinking about. We were like, I don't know if I mentioned it in my reaction or not, but I was like, you know, technically, if Carter, Agent Carter, has kids, would those kids be super soldiers? Or at least have that? I mean, they could. I mean, that's a disgusting way to look at it, but, you know, the government could be like, hey, you know, pumping them out, pump them out. But that's a whole nother deal.
I mean, She-Hulk. Then Peggy boxes and knocks the bag off the rigging, just like live-action Steve did.
Yeah, I remember that.
And she kick-flips a weight
that
and
was
frisbees it into the wall, just like the big kick-flip move in Captain America Winter Soldier. And she's just showing that she is ready for the shield. Meanwhile, wounded Steve does physical therapy, similar to Rhodey at the end of Civil War, but like Rhodey, Steve has a future in a Stark-designed armored suit. Then on to the Turnsburg Church, which actually opened the first Captain America film. And compared to that establishing shot, now the church's front light is not lit. But still, Schmidt rolls up in his roadster with the same close-up of his modified Benz hood ornament with the Hydra logo. Now Ross Marquand voices Red Skull. He actually took over the role from Hugo Weaving.
Great
Red Skull
job.
Infinity War. The wooden engraving of the Yggdrasil World Tree here is way bigger, and Schmidt's hand runs across a new section that was not in the film, a ring with the Tesseract in the middle and tentacles snaking out. Of course, foreshadowing how he will use the Tesseract to open a portal for the Interdimensional Champion to arrive through. But really, all of this is a way of showing that here, Schmidt's end goal for the Tesseract is not world domination under the Hydra flag, really reaching out into the cosmos, which is a bit ironic because in the movie, Red Skull did blast it out into space, into here cosmos. He ends up dead on Earth. Peggy, Howard, and Colonel Flynn review the Tesseract in a textbook, and above that illustration are some Norse runes, and as was the case with Loki, Marvel's Norse alphabet is all over the place because this seems to translate to gibberish. But the caption beneath is Italian that translates to the hypercube in the true shape of the space stone. Whoa! The fact that the Tesseract contained an Infinity Stone did not seem to be public knowledge. Though, who knows? This textbook could contain some references or citations from the Italian Book of Cagliostro, which contained knowledge about the Time Stone in the Eye of Agamotto, so I don't know, maybe Infinity Stones were some ancient knowledge on Earth, just known by certain people. Howard gives her new suit in a box labeled Howard's Designer Clothing, and also her own shield, which instead of the stars and stripes, now bears the iconography of the Union Jack. And notice how there's a blue stripe on the outer edge instead of the red one. Now, the Hero's Journal is here to help you accomplish your goals by turning them into a quest. Based on goal-setting psychology and the story theory behind some of your favorite fandoms, the Hero's Journal helps you discover the story you tell about yourself and define the quest.
Sounds good.
Code new
Let's keep going
for your 10% off. So Carter suits up and stops Arnim Zola at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate, and we hear her theme music.
That is such a cool shot, man. Superhero landing.
Which is a slightly altered version of the Captain America theme.
Right. I mean, I feel like it was a
really
completely new one.
Lighting, in this case, to give dimension to these otherwise 2D characters, to make their movements look more fluid and pop off the screen. Like, notice how whenever Carter makes a power move, she's always illuminated by one of the headlights of one of the cars she's stopping or has just flipped over. The end result is to outline her in this white glow and also creating a really nice glare off her shield.
That was such
Carter
a
walks
cool
away
shot.
from this with the Tesseract, and Howard uses it to power the Hydra Stomper armor for Steve. Now, I'm not sure why it would have to be Steve who gets to pilot it. I don't know. Having a tiny test pilot would be useful to lighten the overall load. Now, in the film, Howard does experiment briefly on the Tesseract for weapons purposes, but while this episode doesn't really go into it, it is hugely significant for Howard to build a flying suit of armor, essentially an Iron Man Mark I prototype, decades before his son would do so. Carter rescues the 107th, approaching on a motorcycle, placing her shield in front of her, just like how Steve does in the other scene in the movie. And inside, we meet the Howling Commandos, including Dum Dum Dugan. Actually, Neil McDonough returns to voice him here. There's also
that's
James
so cool.
Montgomery Fallsworth, Gabe Jones, Jacques Denier, Jim Morita, and Bucky Barnes. Sebastian Stan voices a few one-liners in this episode that, well, reminded me that I'm an adult watching a kid's show. There's the famous door opening shot from the film.
Yep.
Steve drops in with the Hydra Stomper. Actually, I love how inside his face appears surrounded by a heads-up display, similar to the close-ups of Tony Stark inside the Iron Man helmet, but instead of the digital projections, they're all analog dials and meters. He zaps a tank and it blows up, but for one frame, the blast recolors the shot in all white and then all black. Just a cool way of showing the brightness of the explosion that is powered by an Infinity Stone. Steve says,
"Let's hear it for Captain Carter!"
Which Bucky said for Steve in the movie.
"Let's hear it for Captain America!"
And then during a swing music montage, there's a fun tracking shot that follows Carter all the way from
so
outside
much
through
violence.
the German plane, not cutting as she fights her way through the cabin, and up through the hatch, and then down the tail. Some fun storyboarded action here. A Nazi general snaps at Red Skull.
So the one thing that was getting to all of us was like, she doesn't have a helmet at all, or doesn't tie her hair back, or anything like that. I was like, but you know, she gotta look pretty.
Captain
Style.
Carter and this so-called Hydra Stomper are wreaking havoc.
This is actually a vocal cameo by SNL actor turned SNL announcer Daryl Hammond. Carter and Rogers share a drink.
I miss a good whiskey, but the serum doesn't allow me to feel the effects.
Kind of a reversal of the scene in the film.
I can't get drunk. Did you know that?
Your metabolism burns 4 times faster than the average person.
Then they stage this train mission, just like the one in the film, but Carter calls it here Operation Where Eagles Dare, a reference to the 1968 World War II film that was also set in the Alps.
Wow.
Bucky almost falls as he does in the live-action version,
Right,
but
that was
Carter
great.
saves him.
Woo! Thanks! You almost ripped my arm off!
Yeah, we get it, Bucky. But in this case, it is Steve who dies, seemingly, but actually falls into Hydra's clutches. Carter comes back and interrogates Zola, with Toby Jones returning to voice the character.
Awesome.
I will tell you nothing.
Great
Told
job.
me everything.
And Carter points to Castle Crake on the map, a name evoking the word Kraken, which is the sea monster of legend, with similar giant tentacles as the interdimensional beast that they end up facing. There's another long oneer that follows Carter running through the Black Forest, over the castle walls, taking down the
This
guards,
was
and
some
then
of the
opening
best
gate for the
animation I've
others to
ever
come
seen.
through. Red Skull uses the Tesseract to open a portal decades before
Really good.
S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Project Pegasus would use it the same way. This tentacled creature with a mouth full of sharp teeth is never named. I guess it's similar to the interdimensional beast called the Obelisk in Guardians Volume 2, but I'm thinking it could be one of the Elder Gods or many angled ones from the 2009-2010 Realm of Kings Marvel comics that feature Quasar, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Nova, Project Pegasus versus the Revengers. The many angled ones are Lovecraftian interdimensional beings that look a lot like this. One of them is Shuma Gorath, who's actually rumored to appear in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. See, I know this multiverse stuff is getting harder and harder to understand, but so far in the Marvel multiverse, it seems like you have timelines and universes, which are realities parallel to our own that sometimes branch off from each other to form new ones, as we saw in Loki. But then in between those timelines, you have what Marvel seems to be calling dimensions and realms that they say are beyond space and time. And these are the surreal acid trips that we see like in the Doctor Strange movies. The dark dimension, also the quantum realm. And I think in a dimension like this is where the many angled ones reside. That could explain how Peggy Carter ended up going through that dimension to end up in the present day, much like Scott Lang's quantum realm time dilation in Avengers Endgame. Now, Howard cannot read the German controls, but they translate to voltage, resistance, capacity, charge, close, load, reduction, power supply, overwrite, and hydropower. Actually, when he cranks up that close lever, that is when the portal begins to close. He actually mentioned spending a weekend with Hedy Lamarr, who is an Austrian-born American actress who's actually a major asset to the Allied war effort. She co-invented a radio guidance system that was intended for torpedoes, and she got a ton of war bonds sold. So yeah, someone you could imagine Howard Stark bragging about hanging out with. it. Carter picks up a sword, and with her shield, she just looks very much
so
like an
dope.
English knight. Now, there is a Captain Britain in the Marvel Comics, Brian Braddock, who leads the Interdimensional Captain Britain Corps. And
with
Peggy actually mentioned Braddock in an off-screen line in Endgame. If we're talking about futures for Captain Carter, I would love to see her organize a Captain Britain Corps. Rogers and Carter's rain check dance date from the movie comes back here, except Carter is the one sacrificing herself, except she doesn't die or go into ice. She immediately transports into the future. The portal opened by the Tesseract in the Project Pegasus basement, and what looks like the days before Loki's arrival via that same portal in Avengers. Samuel L. Jackson and Jeremy Renner return to voice Nick Fury and Clint Barton, and Carter says,
"We won the war."
Which is a bit of irony, considering she has arrived just in time to help the Avengers fight Loki's invasion. Her war is really just beginning. Now again, the producers plan to make Captain Carter a returning hero in this series. She's confirmed to be in an episode for season 2, and trailer footage shows her talking to Doctor Strange.
Season
a different
2?
Episode maybe from this season. And personally, I would love to see a cameo of her in live action, like drifting in the background of the Multiverse of Madness, fighting that tentacled beast like Gandalf fighting the Balrog.
That'd be kind of cool.
Might just be me. Let me know your thoughts.
That'd be cool.
I'm down with that. By checking out our merch options at newrockstarsmerch.com.
All right.
Follow me on Instagram.
So there you go. There you have it. Oh man. Everything we kind of knew from What If. Nothing. The theories are understandable. But I have to say that animation with What If was so good, guys. It was like again, it really reminded me of like what kind of Pixar is doing, but at the same time, it had its own little flair, a stylization. It reminds me of Soul a little bit. Some really good stuff. So, Red Red Nation, stand up, speak up. Let me know if there's anything else that you guys caught that Eric Ross did not, and I'd love to see what you have to say about it. See you next week for What If. Doo-doo-doo.